Hello, everyone, and welcome to Herosner Podcast, Season 4, Episode 4.
Yes.
We are back with our regular mano a mano episodes. Today, we're going to be talking about King Gagik I Bagratuni the first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He basically took over after Sambat's death.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about his life and everything he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we're still in this time era.
Yeah.
Let's say time era, because there's a lot of tons. We've talked about it a lot. There's tons and tons of information about so many of the different families and the factions and what was really going on, because there was not turmoil, but there was a lot of inter-family strife and whatnot, and alliances, and there's so much information about all those alliances and some of the architectural buildings and things like this, and a lot of the achievements.
Yeah.
So,
it was
lots of information during this time era.
Great time, and for Armenian, there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of turmoil with the Byzantines and caliphates, and all this stuff that was happening.
It wasn't just like one thing swept through that time era. There's so many different branches of what was going on in this like little 250 year time period.
So we got a lot of information to cover today. I think you guys are gonna like this episode. Like I said, a lot of detailed events we're gonna be talking about. But as usual, there isn't much announcements. Obviously, right now, the world is pretty much on fire with everything that's happening in the Middle East. It's an unfortunate situation, and it's kind of almost cast a shadow on what happened in Armenia and Artsakh.
Well, there's certain geopolitical tie-ins, but that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah, and you and I have discussed that we want to do an episode and talk about everything that's happening right now and how it ties into our history and everything that has taken place.
Yeah.
We're working on that. We want to put a great informational program together for you guys. So it's factual.
And we're not making any of this stuff up. Just some stuff that Vic and I usually talk about that
off air.
Yeah, off air. Could have major tie-in to ancient times leading up to modern times.
Yeah.
And how that era in between has been impacted through certain individuals, groups, factions, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. But what I wanted to mention is we're still helping Hike for Our Heroes to raise as much funds as possible. They are on the grounds in Armenia helping all the displaced families from Artsakh. They're doing amazing work. If you guys don't follow them on Instagram, and you'll see all the videos that they post, everything that they are doing. Great organizations and veterans of Armenia as well. They kind of joined forces together, both organizations. And we trust them. You've seen in previous episodes, we've donated on our behalf. So if you guys can, please go help as much as possible.
Join them on their hikes.
Yeah, join them on their hikes. They recently just did a night at one of the, I think it was like a bonfire at a beach.
Dude, we got to go again. I want to go.
I know. Unfortunately, it was.
I know you're busier than I am on the weekends.
Yeah, with the kids and everything. But definitely follow them. So, and also we mentioned that we are working on the sculpture, Hike Nahapet. You're almost finished with that.
Should be done by the end of this week, the latest.
Yeah. So next episode, we will feature that. Follow us on Instagram where we will post it. And this is going to be pre-order. And we're going to take pre-orders. It's made to order. And then it'll take probably a few weeks to maybe even a month for it to be ready. And then we'll ship it to you. And again, like we said, all the proceeds from those sculptures that are sold will be going to Hike for Our Heroes organization. Last episode with Katya, it was a great,
that was a great conversation.
Great conversation. I want to thank everybody who has watched that episode and listened to it. We had over 10,000 views on YouTube. Thank you so much. And if you guys go back to that video, We have the link for her book. Go ahead and purchase that book.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Read it. You'll learn a lot from her story.
She's so
and
knowledgeable.
Yeah, yeah, and all the time she put in
Yeah.
to do all that
A lot of
research
information.
to share the truth of what
Yep.
has taken place, going all the way back to the 1800s
Hmm.
till now. So, besides that, that's pretty much it. So, like I said, we're back to just you and I doing what we do best. I love the interviews, but I missed this. So, again, today we're going to be talking about Gagik the first.
Shall we Bagratuni again?
Let me put on my glasses so I can see.
So you could look smart.
I'm an old man now.
Wait,
so.
hold on.
Yeah.
No, they're real.
Yeah, well, once you get in your 40s, the eyesight starts
I'm getting there.
going. Yeah,
I'm getting there.
So, back in 990, when Sambat II, without an heir, kind of left the scene,
Mhm.
it was his younger brother, Gagik I, who took the reins of Armenian throne, right?
Yeah, exactly. Gagik Bagratuni, who ruled for 3 decades, up until 1020?
Yeah.
Under the leadership of Armenia, especially the capital Ani, truly flourished under his reign.
Yeah.
The 11th century historian Aristakis Lastivertsi, Lastivertsi.
Yeah.
I might have slightly butchered it, but I like that first name is awesome. Aristakis.
Very
It's got like
Italian, you know.
No, man,
No,
Greek.
Greek?
Aristakis.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I kind of hear Italian, but okay.
He had quite an impression of him, labeling him a strong and victorious king who kept Armenia peaceful. If you're victorious, you better keep your country peaceful.
Yeah.
I've also come across another historian by the name of Stepan of Taron, or Stephen of Taron, as he's referred to. We've talked about him before. We've made mention of him, who highlighted how King Gagik managed to bring back the lands of the Parisos and Sunik kingdoms, as well as regions like Gardman, Vayotzor, Chahuk, and parts of Tazruk under the central Bagratuni domain.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just a peaceful gathering. But like basically quite a few of the reunifications were achieved through military might.
Well, of course.
Think about Vaspurakan, Avanan, Tashid, and Sunik. They all recognized King Gagik I's rule, both in principle and in practice. And this recognition often came after Gagik demonstrated his military prowess, reminding these kingdoms who really held power.
Yeah, fascinating.
Right?
Very fascinating.
Yeah. And that's there's that piece of him reclaiming the counties of Gokovit, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Zachkoten. It's
we've had trouble with that one.
with the way they have these. It's Zachkoten. Yeah. And also, very important, liberating Divin from Muslim rule, previously having been a tug of war between the Bagratuni and the Artsruni families.
And that was a very pivotal thing. We've discussed that in numerous episodes.
Yeah.
The battle for Divin.
Back and forth, yeah.
So Stephen of Taron's observations about King Gagik are pretty interesting, to say the least. He says, and I quote, "The king acquired more lands and castles than even his brother managed, and there wasn't an enemy feared under his rule in Armenia. And all of this because he was both wise and skilled in warfare, but also incredibly magnanimous."
Yeah. That's
a word. Magnanimous,
right? Yeah. Well, I mean, he kind of wanted to follow his brothers, what Sambat II had done, and more.
He achieved a lot.
More powerful. Yeah.
As to his military might, I was amazed to learn that under Gagik Arachin, or Gagik I, Armenia boasted a standing army of roughly 100,000. And again, back then, that's a massive number. We're not talking about today's, military is 2 million strong or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, 100,000 back then, especially for the region that we had.
Oh yeah,
that's a
lot,
heck of an army.
That's a lot of men right there.
Even the powerful Byzantine emperor Basil, as we've talked about, or Barseg, as the Armenians called him, of the Armenian dynasty, had to tread carefully when he tried to annex Taik in 1001, right after David Bagratuni's death. he soon found himself bordering not just the kingdom of Rars, but also the central Bagratuni kingdom of Armenia.
Yeah, definitely. King Gagik wasn't someone to be easily pressured.
No.
In fact, Basil II quickly realized that annexing the significant kingdom centered in Ani wouldn't be walk in the park. I mean, talk about showing.
It didn't seem like the Bagradunis were pushovers.
No, but especially Gagik speaks to Gagik's strength and his instance of maintaining the revered Bagratuni title like King of Kings and King of Armenia, Iberia, and Albania.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well,
right.
As we've talked about Albania and Iberia being basically modern day Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back and forth in history and you read about everything that was happening, it's such a remarkable era for Armenia.
Yeah.
Right.
Continuing on with the saga of Gagik's era, we see another Bagratuni domain strengthening. Tashi Zoraket. We've also made mention of this prior. A fascinating figure emerges from there, David Bagratuni, who was famously known as the Landless, or Anhorin in Armenian.
Yeah.
Interesting name. Or interesting nickname given
we haven't talked about David Bagratuni.
But
this is the first time there's a mention of him.
But the nickname is Anhorin, or the Landless. David the Landless.
There's a reason for that.
Yes, there is.
So
David's reign spanned quite some time, right from 989 to 1048. It's quite a while.
Yeah.
He was an aggressive ruler, capturing territories from the Emirate of Tbilisi, or Tabriz, and he even made the Emir his subordinate, which is quite an achievement.
Wow.
Plus, he triumphed over the Shadid Emir of Ganzak, Al-Fadi ibn Muhammad I, bringing parts of the Armenian provinces like Artsakh and Utik under his control. Hey, Artsakh's mentioned 1,000 years ago. Where was Azerbaijan?
Nowhere to be found.
Sorry, I had to...
Yeah, but David's ambitions got the better of him when he tried to challenge King Gagik I, the recognized king of Armenia.
Yes,
right?
yes. And Gagik's response was immediate and, most importantly, severe. Yes. He annexed all of David's territories, which led to David being labeled as the Landless.
There you go.
So, I mean, it's like, I shall take the land away from you, and we shall name you the Landless.
Talk about a scar for life.
I mean, it's like, how, it's like, here, we're just going to brand you this too.
Yeah.
In historical records of the time, that's what he was referred to as.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that Gagik was also compassionate. Once David acknowledged his authority, Gagik graciously returned his territories.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That name stuck.
Yeah, of course it did.
That's it.
I'm curious how long that this acknowledgement took.
Yeah.
Because that would be very important, because that would give a lot of people plenty of time to get used to that name.
Yeah.
You know? It's like any nickname that somebody gets used to. It's like it didn't happen for 2 days, 3 days, or 2 weeks.
It's a long time, and then it just sticks, and that's it. That's how even like, if they get older, let's say you got a nickname when you were in junior high or something like that, right? It's gonna stick. You're like 40 years old, they're still calling you the Landless.
Exactly.
So while Gagik was dealing with David, there were movements in Iberia, particularly with Gurgen II Bagratuni and his son Bagrat the third, I should say, in Abkhazia, right?
Yeah, I mean, Gurgen II was at the helm in Iberia at the time.
Yeah.
And after his death in 1008, with Gagik the first assistant, his son Bagrat Yerort, or the third, managed to merge the kingdoms of Abkhazia and Iberia, what we'd now identify as Georgia. Abkhazia is, I think today, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of like are they considered an autonomous area in Georgia? Remember that whole conflict that happened with Russia? When was it, in 2010 or sometime
around there? Yeah, I don't remember the date.
Yeah.
But isn't it still annexed by Russia?
Yeah,
Abkhazia,
I think something
it's still controlled by Russia or something like that.
But I think it's still within the borders of Georgia, but controlled by Russia. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. It's
Call
like
it an occupation.
It's
Yeah.
It's like a pretty big chunk of the country, though.
Yeah. But Gagik didn't just stop with helping with unification.
Yeah.
He also helped Baghdad III during any type of military confrontations.
Oh, of course he
Right?
did. Of course he did.
Yeah.
When especially during the when the Shadadid Emir.
Yeah.
Hold on, I keep messing up his name. Al-Fadi ibn Muhammad
There you go.
attacked Kakheti around 1010. Gagik was right there, backing Bagrat III. There was a crucial Georgian primary source. This individual's name was Matian Kartlisi, or Chronicle of Kartli in English, that provides detailed insights into this period. I guess he was their version of their historian, maybe, that was chronicling everything.
Yeah.
The title of Matian, by the way, is actually derived from the Armenian word of Matian, which means manuscript.
Yep.
It's fascinating how some of these cultures share so many of these words.
Yeah. It is an intriguing connection.
Yeah.
I wonder what
absolutely. Well, I mean, a certain someone created their alphabet.
True.
Did he not?
Yeah, he did.
5 centuries prior to this.
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's a lot of words that are being shared and whatnot. And, you know?
And we wonder what the Chronicles of Katil say about that time.
Please do tell us.
The Chronicle paints a vivid picture. Al-Fadl, the emir of Ganji, secretly started raiding the regions of Erti and Kakheti. Now, King Bagrat, infuriated by Fadl's audacity, gathered his troops and reached out to Gagik for support. Gagik, obviously more than eager to help, assembled his forces and met Baghdad. The two unified their armies at Zorakert, and when Al-Fadil witnessed their combined might advancing, he was paralyzed with fear, retreating to one of his fortresses. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Guy backed off.
He saw that 100,000 plus coming towards him.
I mean, that's a big army, man.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if the whole thing's assembling to come at you on horseback and on foot. It's a huge army.
It's just so captivating to imagine these great kings, their armies and the ancient landscapes that they ruled.
Thank God for, what was his name again? Matian?
Yeah.
Matiani? What? Let me get that correct one more time. What was his name? Hold on. Matian Kartlisi.
Kartlisi, there you go.
Yeah, thank God for these chroniclers, right? Like,
I'm just that time, we keep talking about that time machine. What a time must have been, right?
But now you're asking to like jump around timelines and just be a spectator of all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
But would you interfere? Oh, see, that's a good question there. Okay, that's we don't have to talk about that now, but would you interfere? Like, knowing what you know. See, this gets into that whole Back to the Future conundrum.
Yeah. If you interfere, what happens then?
Messes with the time-space continuum.
Yeah.
Like Doc said.
Yeah. And then
Back to the Future stuff.
And then you come back, Army is ruling the entire world.
Should we try this?
I don't know. I'm talking.
Should we say something? Come on.
Hey, so why don't you guys start supporting us on Patreon so we can build that time machine?
Yeah, it would be great.
Nice segue, huh?
It would be great. I mean, it would be great technology to get involved in. Anyway, truly an unbelievable era of powerful leaders, military alliances. It's just like this whole time period we've been covering between 9th and 11th centuries. I know we've kind of been, it feels like we're kind of doing this, but too many alliances, too many major battles, armies and whatnot to talk about. It's kind of too important to just, shove under the rug and walk away.
Yeah.
So yeah, history never fails to amaze.
Well, diving deeper into the personal life of Gagik I, let's talk about his royal union. Now, he married Princess Katranide or Katramide, depending on which way you want to go.
We've heard this name plenty of times before.
Daughter of King Basaksuni, right?
Yes, indeed. As she was the queen also known as Katranide II, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Together, they had quite the their own little army themselves. 3 sons, 2 daughters.
Wow.
3 sons we've talked about. Hovannes Sambat, names would sound familiar.
Did we talk about the daughters, though?
No,
I don't remember
I'll
that.
get there in a second. Hovannes Sambat, Abbas, and Ashot, who we have made mention
Yeah,
before.
of course, yeah.
And the 2 daughters, Hushush, which is one of the daughters, ended up marrying the last Artsruni king of Vaspurakan, Senekerim Hovannes, who we have spoken about.
Yes.
While Sophia, we have never spoken about her, became the queen besides the Bagratuni king of Iberia. So you see the pieces of the chessboard are being placed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, there's some interesting speculation about some of these timelines of their marriages and whatnot, but we're not really getting into that.
Yeah. Many scholars believe that Gagik might have married Katramide before he officially became the king, when he was still ruling the county of Gagik, which covers the Lake Sevan Basin area, known as Lake Geram back then, actually. A lot of people might not know that. Sevan used to be called Geram. Given its proximity of the kingdom of Sunik, there's little doubt that Gagik and King Vasak Suni had closer, relationship, which probably paved the way for Gagik's union with Katramide. And by the way, listeners, stay tuned for our special episode dedicated to Queen Katramide II. We're trying to gather a lot more information about her because I think she's a fascinating female
she's
powerhouse.
She's come up in numerous episodes.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of decided.
She was a very important figure next to King Gagik the First, and in completing the Great Mother Cathedral of Ani. So soon as we're doing a lot of research trying to put all this together to have a nice story for you guys so we can present her the right way. So that's going to be coming up.
Still trying to figure out how to say her name properly.
According to
Katranid.
Yeah, according to Professor Christina Moranti, she said that Yatsu. She said that some historians know her as Katramide, some know her as Katranide. We were saying Katranid.
Katranid, I thought maybe the E didn't really have any significance, but I guess it does.
But speaking of significant figures, during King Gagik's reign, we see the rise of new noble families, the House of Palavuni, a house which was originally not as influential.
But as we know, some way, somehow they became influential.
Yeah.
So the House of Palavuni, ascent was mere happenstance, to say the least.
Yeah.
To counter the secessionist tendencies of the older, powerful Nakharar houses, like the Artsunis or Sunis, Gagik made a calculated move. He aimed to build a robust power base by empowering previously smaller aristocratic houses in exchange for their unwavering royalty. The Pavlavunis were one such beneficiary of this plan.
Yeah, they jumped on the opportunity.
So basically, Gagik was trying to neutralize some sort of I guess call it, I don't want to say uprising, but he saw something was brewing somewhere, maybe in the distance or somewhere near. Like, all right, how do I kind of balance this out?
Yeah.
I need some people on my side. Not that people were against him, but he needed some powerful allies or to bring somebody up top to kind of balance things out here.
Yeah. And this move significantly strengthened the kingdom's overall potential. He knew what he was doing. Post Gagik's reign, the Palvunis held a substantial land in the Nig County of Ararat province, especially around the Bajni fortress. And let's not forget, in the centuries that followed, many key religious leaders, including Archbishop of Ani and several Catholic of the Armenian Church, came from the house of Palavuni.
Of course. So, I mean, if you kind of ascend to something and you're a beneficiary of such fruits, then you're gonna get into high places.
Yeah.
Pretty pretty strategic masterstroke, to say the least, ensuring what you want to call this, like political stability or whatever you want to call this. I mean, it's kind of the case, right?
I mean, his reign truly reshaped the socio-political fabric of the Armenia, I should say, during that era. Like shifting gears, slightly, let's talk about Gregory Palavuni, also known as Gregory
the magistrate. Magistrate, more or less.
Magistros Palavuni, a scholar, a public official, and one of the most remarkable figures from the house of Palavuni. What's interesting about his title, Magistros?
I like saying it better that way. Magistrate, magistros. I mean, he was a pretty captivating figure, to say the least. The title Magistros, Hellenized, obviously, it sounds Greek, magistros, from the Latin term magister, meaning master, was more of an honorary title granted by the Byzantine emperor to esteemed aristocrats. Your favorite word.
Yes.
Aristocrats.
I love that word.
Unlike other Byzantine titles, which many Armenian aristocrats held and which symbolized various military administrative roles during the Armenian dynasty of the Byzantine Empire. You know what this reminded me of? If any of you Game of Thrones fans, Sam, the chunky dude.
Yeah.
Think about it.
You're right.
Yeah, totally him, right? Like he wanted to dive into the books and learn about the history of the Night King and the White Walkers and all this stuff. Wow, I can't believe I remember that stuff.
Has there been an episode we haven't mentioned Game of Thrones?
It's been a while though. We haven't talked about Game of Thrones in a minute.
No, I'm talking about when it's just you and I. It's always some kind of a.
I mean,
we both love the
but it draws so many parallels because it's essentially indicative of like the close-knit relationship between like the Armenian aristocracy and the empire, right? And wasn't Sam kind of like this like dork outcast kind of guy, and then he got in with the king or the prince or whatever you want to consider him? Yeah.
Well, I mean, precisely. Many Armenian nobles held honorary titles granted by the Byzantine emperors. Given the historical intricacies, it's not surprising that out of the limited magistros titles given to the high-ranking Byzantine officials during this era, a significant portion was granted to the Armenian lords, including those from the house of Palavuni and Apiratian. Never heard of that. Have we talked about them?
Apiratian.
Yeah. No. There's a possibility that Gregory Palavuni received his honorary title from Emperor Basil II when he was when Basil was in Armenia in the year 1001.
That's a pretty honorary title from an honorary person, or a pretty big person.
Yeah.
I've read that when Emperor Basil II would basically kind of come into town, he was very careful with the way he greeted or didn't greet Gagik Bagratuni. There was some interesting things there that when we were looking into this.
Well, you're right about that. You want
to elaborate on that?
Actually, this is very interesting. King Gagik Bagratuni chose not to greet Emperor Basil II, most likely signaling that he would not stand any interference or attempts to annex parts of his kingdom. Talk about a bold move. Given that Basil II was overseeing the annexation of the Armenian province of Taik to the Byzantine Empire at that time. Now, I mean, let's pivot back to Gregory. He was, pretty deeply rooted, to the house of Palavuni, wasn't he?
Yeah, of course he was. I mean, he was a son of, so basically he was a son of Sparapet Vasak Palavuni. I'm still having a little trouble saying that. And a nephew of esteemed Sparapet Varam Palavuni. Gregory's own son, Varam, later assumed the title of Catholicus Gregory II in 1065. This line of leadership persisted, with the house of Pallavuni producing 6 more Catholicoi. I guess kind of ran in the family. Barsac the First, Gregory the Third, Nerses the Fourth, the Gracious, Gregory the Fourth, Gregory the Fifth, and Gregory the Sixth. I mean, they had control of this more or less. Yeah. It's fascinating how they reigned one after the other. I guess they kind of had formed their own little monopoly.
Yeah.
You know, spiritual dynasty of sorts that lasted until the early 13th century.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to the influence and the legacy of the House of Pallavuni in both political and spiritual spheres when it comes to Armenia during that.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, of course, their impact and legacy are more or less like still felt and studied today.
Yeah.
Showcasing like such a lasting influence, especially with the power the family had.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's right.
During that era.
Yeah. Well, let's dive deeper into the remarkable contributions of the Pallavuni family to the culture and architectural fabric of Armenia. Why don't you elaborate on the key landmarks they kind of associated themselves with?
So the Pallavuni family, particularly in the 10th and 11th centuries, made significant contributions to the architectural heritage of Armenia. I mean, we all know that, you know, with power and, you know, flourishing economy at the time, you want to build things. When you build things, the bigger things you build, the more power you flex your muscles with, right? Like this is just the way it was. I mean, even in Renaissance Italy or whatnot, powerful families always built big things. They funded big things. Their names were all over it.
Of course.
Flexed their muscles, right? Which is great because they built beautiful buildings. So one of these examples was the Paron Palace in Ani. Stands as a testament to the family's prominence. As we mentioned, its stylistic and artistic ornamentation remains a marvel to this day. And they weren't limited to just palaces.
No, they weren't. The Pallavunis were also patrons of religious architecture. The Church of Saint Gregory, also known as the Church of Gregory Pallavuni, or Apuramarens, if I'm saying that correctly, was built in the late 10th century and served as a private chapel for the family. I mean, talk about having a pull, right? Lord Sambat Magistros also founded the monastery of the Baganaid in 1010, and in 1031, another religious landmark in Ani was established, the Church of the Holy Apostles. Then there's the Church of Shushan Pallavuni, located near Ani's citadel, which was built in the first half of the 11th century. Their contributions spanned more than just religious edifices.
Well, I mean, it's starting, we've talked about Ani a lot.
Yeah.
Right. But it really starts to make more sense the more and more you talk about it in some of these families with all of this information. The money that was rolling in, the power that some of these families had, and the buildings they were commissioning to be built.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to understand why Ani was the city of 1,001 churches.
There you go.
Because everybody was flourishing.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic time. It's like, well, we want power. Well, we want to build this. And I would like a church there. And I'd like a chapel there. And it just kept going and going and going.
Until we had 1,001 churches.
Well, I mean, that's what they say, but it wasn't the exact number. I think we've talked about that with Christina Moranzi, did we not?
Yeah.
So anyway, in 1040, they constructed the family mausoleum, which very wealthy families have to this day. Adjacent to the Aburamrens church, I think I butchered that too. Another important site to mention is the Marmashen Monastery, where the esteemed Sparapet Varam Pallavuni was laid to rest after his valiant demise on the battlefield in 1045. Now, besides architecture, they also celebrated military leaders. Or they were celebrated military leaders. I can imagine, besides making spiritual contributions.
Of course.
They also kind of extended their tentacles, let's just be realistic here, into other realms
of course.
of society.
I mean, the Pallavuni family was renowned for its Sparapets, or supreme military commanders. Vasak and Varam Palavuni notably led the Armenian army during their times. Their military experts were not just confined to the battlefield. They were pivotal in strengthening the kingdom of Armenia's defense by building new castles, fortresses, and fortifications. For instance, between 988 and 1029, Varam Palavuni erected the Marmashen Monastery. In 1026, he also completed the Varamashen Monastery, which translates to built by Varam. Notably, it was positioned near the famous Palavuni fortress of Ambert. Now, their influence wasn't limited to just military and architectural pursuits.
Of course it wasn't. Military, spiritual, and the Palavunis also played a significant role in boosting the economy of the kingdom of Armenia. Obviously, if you've got the money to build these sort of things and you have a powerful army, let's think about Armenia today, you flourish. You build upon these things. Their vast holdings, apparently, combined with their strategic and economic foresight, facilitated trade, agriculture, and other sectors, laid foundation to robust economic prosperity. I mean, you can't not have just, you're building buildings just to kind of, it's like, we just want to flex our muscle with our architecture. These guys,
or wealth,
these families, these families put money into every single sector.
Yeah.
Right? Like nothing's changed from 1,000 years ago. It's still the same thing today. These families, they didn't take money and keep it in their pockets. They gave back. Yes, they flexed their muscle with cute things and big buildings, but at the same time, you want to protect that stuff, you need an army.
Yeah.
You need a powerful economy where people don't want to destroy you. They want to work with you.
Yeah. And they understood that back then.
Exactly.
So, and
that's the point I'm trying to make.
Hopefully we, our current governments can learn, powerful leaders can learn a few things.
So basically the Palavuni family's contributions and what Gagik did by escalating this family into place, they did wonderful with this opportunity, right? Yeah. They really, what's the word I'm looking for? They capitalized on it.
Yeah.
And pun intended. You know what I mean?
I mean,
in a multi-dimensional way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they were just handed some sort of, here's $1 million check. Go build a few buildings.
I mean, that's one of the main reasons why they're so renowned in Armenian history of all the things that they've done. But besides talking about the Palavuni family, which was obviously pivotal in Armenian history, yet another influential family was the Apiratians. Now, like I said, I hadn't heard about them until we started, researching about this episode. Let's shed some light on this family and its importance during Gagik's reign.
Sure. So the Apiratian family, I guess I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, indeed holds a special place in Armenian history. Founded by Gregory Apirat, this family had notable control in the 11th century, particularly over the Yerevan region. To put into perspective the power of the Apiratians, they commanded a cavalry of 12,000, pretty significant, which was over double the size of the Palavuni's own force.
I mean, that's quite a force. But how did they align, let's say, or interact, if that's the right word, with the Palavunis?
So there's an interesting aspect to this. Despite their separate powers, the Apiratians were actually interrelated with the Palavunis through marriage, of course. There's probably some sort of prior engagements, again, pun intended, or whatever the case is, that kind of connected the two families together. But they produced exceptional generals and they had really high-ranking spiritual leaders. So if you really think about it, you've got two very significant things covered in society, right? Yeah. Military leaders and spiritual leaders. So now people are going to listen to you.
Yeah.
on spiritual side or
and
military
both
side.
the military leaders and spirit, there was a big connection between.
Of course there was. There had to be.
And
There
even during wartime.
Well, that's the thing. You've seen it in movies. The spiritual leader walks them off before they go to battle and whatnot. This is a very interlinked thing.
Advisor to the king.
Yes.
To the commanders, always in the meetings.
So Prince Gregory I Bagratuni and his brother Gevorg held significant territories spanning from the Varaznunic county of the Ayrarat province of Yerevan to Devin's vicinity Their architectural contributions were equally significant. For instance, in 1002, Gevorg established the Church of Katolike in the Havut Dar monastic complex.
Mm-hmm.
Gregory I Bagratuni followed suit, adding the Church of St. Gregory in the same monastery. Moreover, Gregory founded the monastery of Kecharis, which became the burial site for many of the Apiratian princes.
Yeah.
So I guess they built their little place where, their family was more or less buried.
Yeah.
Now, changing or moving over to some like ecclesiastical domain, if you will, King Gagik played a major role in influencing the Armenian church's leadership.
He sure did. In 992, I should say, I was going to say 929, the other way. In 992, the consolidate his power and influence, King Gagik ensured his friend Sarkis I was consecrated as a new Catholicos of Armenian Church. So that's his buddy, and he's like, I gotta get you in there because we got work to do.
Nepotism was big.
Yeah. Now, this alignment of the church and the monarchy became common, streamlining secular and what was that word?
Ecclesiastical.
Ecclesiastical.
That's it.
Power.
This is your new favorite word.
Yeah. There you go.
That's it.
Power. Sarkis I, having previously led Stevanavank monastery within Gagik's domain, then moved to the Catholicos seat to Ani in the same year. So he basically, and it seems like this is a typical pattern. Every time a new Catholico comes in, wherever he was, moves the seat to Ani. This move and the close alignment between King Gagik and Catholicos Sarkis I, both in terms of time and vision, ushered in a golden age of Armenia.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming very obvious that the military side of things, like we just touched on a few moments ago, and the spiritual side of things were so interlinked and so connected, which was super beneficial for the strength of the people and the nation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And everything they stood for, right?
I mean, you couldn't be, more on point. The harmonious partnership led to a remarkable achievement. Ashot III, the Merciful's aspiration was to reestablish the unity of the Armenian church's spiritual centers and the capital, reminiscent of the early Christian era. The dream came to reality during King Gagik I's first reign, with Ani becoming both the spiritual and administrative center during what we can, or it can be described as Armenia's zenith.
Yeah, it really, really underlines the importance of that connection.
Yeah,
it's undoubtedly you can run your society very strong, grassroots level, backbone. Like very, very powerful connection.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see it now today in like modern society with certain countries where you see people kind of disconnecting from. I mean, I'm not saying, people need to follow religion or whatever the case is, but if you have a powerful connection,
big disconnect
between, of course there is. We've you've made mention of it. I've made mention of it in different words, but you kind of have military going one way and the spiritual side going one way. We want our money here. We want our money here. Sorry, but it's true.
Yeah. Fortunately, money and materialistic things have taken over the world, and not just in Armenian culture.
No, not just. This isn't specific to Armenia. This is everywhere.
Just as human beings,
even here.
Yeah. Now, before we continue, again, I want to mention, first of all, I want to thank to everybody who has recently started becoming a Patreon, supporting us. We really appreciate it. We mention this all the time because it's very important, guys. But we have talked about how we have so many projects that we're working on. Some of them we had to pause because of funding issues. Some of them we're putting our own money into it. But like I said, we do this out of the love of our history, our culture. And when you become a Patreon, it's $5 a month. Think of it as for all the work we do, you're buying us a cup of coffee or a shot of cognac. Maybe cognac's more expensive, but you know.
Speaking of which,
yeah. And you know, it helps us to be able to have a budget to do a lot more. Everything, as you all know, costs money. Studio equipment costs money. All the cameras we use cost money, and just putting time and effort to do all this research and put everything together. This is part of our, you know, it's not our day job. We have to do this after our typical daily lives.
yeah,
And
but
so
it's fun.
it is fun, but we need your help. So, you know, 2.5 years into this,
We're not going to stop.
and by the way, I want to mention thank you to everybody. We posted this on Instagram, but we have officially passed 10,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. We're humbled.
Yeah,
We appreciate it.
kind of cool.
That's 10,000 people who like what we do, who are watching us. And we truly, truly, I mean, we never thought we'd be here, especially on YouTube. I mean, we have a great following on the podcast platform. Huge. We're in I think we're at 75 countries now. But you know, continue, please. The best way you can also help us is by sharing this with your friends, family, have them watch, have them subscribe on YouTube, or if they like to listen podcasts, they can find us on any podcast platform.
I had some friends recently when I shared the post that we made, and a couple friends reacted, "Hey man, I promise I'm gonna start listening to you guys at work," and da-da-da. I'm like, "You still haven't?"
Amazing,
Anyway,
right?
I mean, but they've promised me they are watching you.
Yeah.
Watching you, man.
It's all right. And to everybody who's reaching out to us, thank you. We're a little bit slow right now responding to your emails. It's just, like I said, we're really busy, but we will respond. We have responded to most of them, but some of them are asking for a lot of information where we ourselves have to do research to get you those answers. So guys, we're not historians. We're not scholars. So
we do have day jobs.
Yeah. But moving on. So now back to the 990s, which marked the period where Gagik I was deeply involved in the strengthening of both his internal and external possessions. I understand there was an interesting alliance between different branches of the Bagratuni dynasty.
Yeah, so Gagik I was quite a strategist, to say the least.
Yeah.
That led him to form alliances with various Bagratuni branches. This included King Abbas of Gars, David Bagratuni of Taik, and the Bagratuni brothers of Iberia. I mean, you had to, right? The primary objective of this alliance was to counteract the threats posed by the Rawadid Emir Mamlan I, I believe that's his name.
Yeah.
As chronicled by Matthew of Edessa, which we have made mention a couple times.
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah. In 998, Mamlan I invaded northeastern areas near Lake Van with a significant force. This force clashed with the combined army of Gagik I and his allies near the village of Tsumb.
Yeah. Now, someone we mentioned, Varam Palavuni, you know, he was a significant figure and he was very, very instrumental in this conflict, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was basically he was in charge of of a big significant part of the forces,
like the combined forces.
That kind of started to interact in the situation at the Battle of Tsumb.
Yeah.
So this prince, later to be the Sparapet or supreme military commander of the Armenian army, played a pivotal role in this battle and throughout his life in Armenian politics. His valor during the defense of Ani in the early 1040s has also been immortalized. A 20th century novel by Andranik Hovsepian named after him has greatly popularized his legacy and some of his adventures.
I mean, see, when we found out about this, I really want to dive more into Varam Palavuni, and again, we've talked about this before, that we will as we go through this era. I know we're covering different kings, but there's so many other mentioned players.
Yeah, so many
that
other players.
What we'll do is eventually, once we're done with all the kingdoms, we will go back and pick out specific characters like Varam Palavuni and dive more into their life and what they did, and hopefully that will shed more light, to who they were.
Well, this is where the Armenian literary experts, writers, and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they picked these stories and these individuals or these characters to elaborate on.
Yeah.
Or make modern day versions of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why.
Yeah. And I want to put this out there too, to all of our listeners. If you guys know anyone that might be a scholar or has great information about certain parts of history that you would want us to talk about, bring it to the forefront, please have them reach out to us. Again, this is not just about having historians and professors. There are amazing people out there who have read so much, done a lot of research. So if you know people like
even some of you guys are so knowledgeable.
This is
with
not
stuff.
about
It's
just
like
I said.
You guys ever want to come on and talk? If there's a field of expertise things that you've dove into.
Yeah, if you're not shy to be on camera,
come
but
on down.
Again, reach out to us. We would love to have, the biggest problem we have with having intellectual and historians or professors on the show.
Busy.
Not just that, a lot of them are in Armenia who don't speak English. So the problem we come across all the time is when we reach out to them, they want to come on, but then they want us to have a translator. Now, can you imagine us interviewing somebody with a translator next to them? Everything they just said, now we got to pause and wait for the translator to. And we talked about possibly having it pre-recorded and then put subtitles. Now we got to go there and translate the subtitles. But we just feel like it's not going to be the same.
If we have to, we will. Yeah. But it's not an easy bridge to gap.
Yeah, and like I said, the point of this in English is not just for Armenians. This is for a lot of non-Armenians watch and listen to this show. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we are having trouble getting more and more of these professors who have so much information that are in Armenia who don't speak English. But like I said, if you know anyone who has information, have them reach out to us. They can email us pod@medherosner.com or through Instagram. Reach out to us.
If you yourself feel like you have enough knowledge about a particular portion of our history or whatnot, and you want to just come have a conversation, come on down and have a conversation.
Yeah. But let's get back to and talk a little bit more about the strategies during the Battle of Zum.
Of course. Observing the Rawadid forces, Varam Palavuni identified a vulnerability, apparently. Their right wing was comprised mostly of a poorly armed militia, unlike his own elite forces. General Varam, with his deputy commanders Ashot and Sambat Magistros, commanded the formidable Armenian cataphracts, which were elite cavaliers. Added to this, they had reinforcements from King Gagik I Bagratuni of Iberia. Sensing the opportunity, Varam Palavuni instructed his forces to strike the Rawadid's weaker right wing, causing panic and disorder. The maneuver assured Gagik I and his allies a more or less decisive victory.
Wow, that sounds like a pivotal battle for Armenia, right?
You gotta figure these things out, right? So whoever their spies were, saw this,
and we've covered these type of strategies that going all the way back to even Tigran's time of how they used circle, hit the flanks, hit the weaker sides, and trap him and things like that. So, now this victory at Zum ensured that the Emir of Atropatene would not launch another invasion, safeguarding Armenia's borders for the foreseeable future. The combined efforts and the unity of the Bagratuni branches during this period played a significant role consolidating Armenia's territorial integrity. something that needs to take place today. Unity, come together.
Yeah.
We are under attack.
Yeah.
Wake up, Armenians.
Yeah. So diving deeper into King Gagik I and Queen Katranid II, who again, she played a very pivotal role, but like we don't want to give away too much this episode. We want to kind of compile some things, but there's things we're touching on. It's pretty remarkable to note that there's significant contributions to their architectural landscape of their realm. One of the examples being the monastic complex of Khatskong, was a particular point of pride for the royal couple.
The monastic complex of Khatskong. Khatskong.
There you go.
Khatskong stands out as one of the architectural marvels initiated by King Gagik I and Queen Katramide. Located in close proximity to Ani, this complex was unfortunately targeted and destroyed by Turkish army in 1966.
Of course.
Do we need to say anything here? Unfortunately, artillery fire obliterated 4 of the 5 churches within the complex, leaving the 5th church, St. Sarkis, heavily damaged. Such acts of deliberate destructions have unfortunately been a recurring theme in Armenian history, leading the loss of many, many, many cultural treasures, and it's happening today in Artsakh.
Yeah,
every day they're destroying.
History is repeating itself.
Our churches, our monuments, everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've talked about this before and covering different, on episodes about the city of Ani, but the Mother Cathedral of Ani is another gem
Yes, it is. The Mother Cathedral of Ani, also known as the Church of the Holy Mother of God, is a masterpiece of Armenian architecture, designed by the esteemed architect Tartad. We've
talked about it many times.
Yes. It was completed in 1001 under the patronage of King Gagik I and Queen Katranide. Its opulent features, such as the 2-meter tall silver cross, it's a big cross, the crystal chandelier imported from India by Sambat II, and the dome adorned with frescoes, showcase the grandeur of Armenian medieval architecture. Tragically, after 1064, the Seljuks, those damn Seljuks, converted it into a mosque, which led to the covering up of its beautiful frescoes. We've talked about the architectural prowess of Tartad and the influences he had not only in the region but also outside the region in previous episodes.
His structures, and we mentioned this before, throughout the medieval time, it was used in Europe and all over.
Went as far north as the Celtic regions.
Now, Tartad's architectural genius, evident in obviously Mother Cathedral of Ani, is credited with pioneering innovations that would later play a significant role in the development of the Gothic style of the European architecture. Like I said, we've mentioned this many times before. Features like ribbed vaulting, pointed arches, clustered columns, and other unique elements that Tartad employed were innovated at the time and became foundational elements of the Gothic style that dominated European architecture from the 12th century onwards. Esteemed art historians, including David Talbot Rice and Joseph's, I'm going to butcher this, Stryzgowski have highlighted these innovations, underlining Tartad's monumental impact on world architecture. We talked about this before. I know it's kind of repeating, but it's part of it. It has so much. They're all tied in together.
But it's still fascinating to think about, even in the midst of a conversation about like the global impact that some of our spiritual architecture has had. I mean, specifically in Europe and what do you want to call them? The English islands, the Celtic regions, that far north.
And
Talked
it's
about
funny.
it before.
people go, tourists to go there and see all these architectures are in awe, how beautiful. And it's like, okay, so remember, this is all because of Tartad.
More or less.
And his design and his architecture.
More or less.
So just keep that in mind next time you're visiting and saying how beautiful these architectures are. Remember, that's Armenian architecture.
Yeah.
The DNA is Armenian architecture. Now, let's continue our journey through Armenian architectural history and dive a little bit deeper into architect Tartad's significant contributions. Tartad's meticulous attention to detail and commitment to preserving the past while introducing new innovation makes him an architectural legend. Let's explore more about Gagik Cathedral, another architectural marvel of Tartad's design. I mean, if we dive a little bit deeper through the phase of our journey, we're going to find out so much more about his design.
If when you design something, you're not only trying to be innovative, but you're also trying to pay homage. You're not,
of course,
think about the fact that we're now in this time era, in the early 11th century. All this stuff is being built. We're 700 years removed from accepting Christianity.
Yeah.
And starting to build churches, right? At this point, you're 7 centuries in, you're going to need to preserve something, but at the same time be innovative because you're moving forward, right?
Yeah.
It's design. It's
of course.
The way it is.
Yeah.
After completing one major thing that he did, he had to repair the dome of the Mother Cathedral. So he seamlessly transitioned to bringing the architectural wonder to life. However, while the main structure was completed by 1001, epigraphs inscribed around 1010 AD suggest that work may have extended for nearly another decade. The addition of the relics from the monastery of Saint Haripsime, thanks to the Catholicos Sarkis I of Sevan, in a neighboring church, speaks to the spiritual significance and intent of structures around the Mother Cathedral. The Gagik Cathedral in Ani is another crowning achievement of Tartad that we haven't really elaborated on.
It sure is. Now, this was built between 1001 to 1005. The Gagik Cathedral was Tartad's tribute to the 7th century Armenian Cathedral of Zvartnots, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Interestingly, Tartad's inspiration came from Zvartnots, which had likely collapsed due to a powerful earthquake in 983. Again, we mentioned this. That's what they're thinking. That's one of the reasons why the destruction of the Zvartnots Cathedral.
Fascinating building.
Yeah, his vision was to reincarnate the grandeur not in the Vagarshapat, but in Ani, basically. While the Gagik Cathedral took the inspiration from Zvartnots, Tartad introduced several innovations. The architectural elements, such as columns, arches, were enhanced, echoing his signature style, basically.
Well, I mean, the guy had already, more or less kind of established his own way of working, right?
Yeah.
His own aesthetic, so to speak.
Now, I mean, we talked about the buildings and the architecture, but let's dive a little bit more deeper into the magnificent statue of King Gagik I Bagratuni.
This is kind of up my alley now.
That adored the Gagik Cathedral.
So Gagik got his own sculpture, his own statue.
Yeah.
It was fairly large, 2.26 meters to be exact. I mean, look, it's not. I'd say about that's like life size. 2.26 meters is about what, like 6.5, 7 feet?
Yeah, somewhere
more or less, right?
Yeah.
Life size. Which could indicate he was a pretty tall man, if that was life size.
True.
6.5, 7 feet ain't bad. So the statue was a polychrome statue which depicted King Gagik I in all his royal glory. Notably, the statue is more refined and realistic than previous representations, reflecting the cultural renaissance that blossomed during King Gagik I's reign. Thanks to the 1905 and 1906 excavations led by Professor Nicholas Marr, this statue, along with other artifacts, were discovered. Marr's team consisted of prominent Armenian specialists, which each contributing their expertise to the understanding of Ani. It's also worth noting that unlike other king's representations that are often seen as reliefs or whatnot on walls, frescoes and whatnot, King Gagik I's sculpture stands nearly, basically it's a three-dimensional sculpture on a specially constructed platform
like
or
a
niche.
Yeah.
These unique placements set it apart and emphasize its significance.
Yeah.
I mean, even the size of it. We haven't really talked about anything thus far architecturally that may have had any sort of sculpture of said king, queen, or whatever the case is that was fairly large up until this
almost,
point.
Like you said, a full-on three-dimensional.
Like an actual statue of an individual. We've talked about frescoes. We've talked about manuscripts having beautiful artwork in it that depict stories and information and whatnot. But this is actually, I might be wrong, this is the first time we've talked about somebody getting a statue.
Yeah. Well, we've touched upon his sculpture in with the episode we did with Christina Moranci.
Mm-hmm.
But Marr's archaeological expeditions and just everything he's done for the historical understanding of Anis, from let's say 1892 to 1916, he brought a lot of insight into Ani's history.
Mm-hmm.
His team, including notable figures like Toros Toramanyan and Hovsep Orbeli, documented, analyzed, and shared their findings, enriching our understanding of Ani's architectural and cultural heritage.
Mm-hmm.
My tongue's twisting now, so I'm having a hard time saying these words. The detailed documentation included photographs by Adam Varuir, offering a glimpse into Ani's past, enabling future generations to appreciate its glory and the talents of architects like Tortad.
Yeah, it's truly a really inspiring time in history.
Yeah.
With, again, I know I don't want to sound redundant, but we talked about how it was a flourishing time. People, they were putting time and effort into making everything look gorgeous and beautiful and to show the power of what they had established, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the beauty. That beauty shows that, like, hey, we are a flourishing economy. Like, come deal with us.
Yeah.
Don't destroy this. You know what I mean? It's really an interesting time in like world heritage.
Yeah.
Really is.
No, I agree. Time machine.
Yeah. Time machine. We just can't mess with it.
Yeah.
Until things get dangerous. Then maybe.
Yeah.
Then maybe.
Yeah. Now continuing our intricate journey, let's time travel. Speaking of time machines, to events post Kemalist occupation of Kars. It's impossible not to feel the weight of a cultural loss. Let's talk about the aftermath of the occupation and its impacts. Can we
just end the episode here, because this is where this is where this stuff goes downhill.
Yeah, it's like the somber chapter of our history.
Every episode.
Yeah, every episode. It's like we talk about all this great
all
stuff,
this great stuff, and it just
wah, wah, wah. But it's okay. These are things that later other kings and leaders came and learned from, and still
have they
learning from them.
Have they though?
Armenian government. Yeah. Continuing.
Are we going to get in trouble for that?
Oh, I'm done with it.
No. I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about them.
Oh, them?
You think they might just kind of pick up on this? Like, look at these two clowns.
Yeah. What are they going to do?
I don't know. I'm just. I mean, seriously. They're probably not going to like this very much, but who
It's
cares?
all right. Don't worry about it. Let's
Well,
move on.
Whatever. Anyway, adding to this somber chapter,
Yeah.
after the occupation of Kars by Kemalist forces, the Museum of Ani faced significant devastation. Among the many lost treasures was the statue of King Gagik, which we'll elaborate on.
Yeah.
Though believed to be entirely lost, a fragment was discovered in 1998 by Georgian scholar, and I'm going to try not to butcher this, Georgi Kavtaradze.
Bro, we've mentioned this name before.
I know, but it's not, you're not used to saying this stuff.
Yeah.
In the Museum of Erzurum. Tragically, the rich history of the fragment, of this fragment was reduced to mere speculations, apparently, with even mistakenly identifying it as a part of a fish or a lion statue.
Yeah, and we made fun of that.
Yeah.
This is Sunbot's episode. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Fish.
Fish.
How does a hand look like a fish?
Yeah, how does a hand look like
I
a
don't know.
fish?
Oh, maybe in all right, I'm gonna stop there.
Depending on who's looking at it.
Well, who was looking at it? The
I don't
Turks
know.
were looking at
But
it, and they saw a
thank
fish.
you. That's what I said.
I mean,
depending on who's looking at it.
Mike, don't break the mic.
I'll try not to break the mic, Mike.
All right. Somber mode. The devastation faced during the Armenian genocide and the ensuing years had far-reached impacts. The plunder and destructions were profound.
Yeah,
They,
they
Mr.
were.
Mike.
Absolutely, they were. In 1918, we saw Ani invaded by the Turks.
Of course.
Right? Following this invasion, years of scientific research and valuable artifacts were lost almost instantly.
Yep.
Another wave of devastation came in 1920 when Mustafa Kemal's general, Kazim Karabekir, not only occupied significant Armenian territories, but also added to the destruction. Of course they would. They're not going to settle on something less.
Again, guys, we have covered this in previous episodes because it is important that we want to mention what took place in Ani and how they
and how they basically
artifacts,
destroyed everything and whether they took it upon themselves. And I'll get to it in a second. The irony lies in the misrepresentation of some of these artifacts in Turkish museums. I'll give you an example. One can speculate how the statue of King Gagik ended up in Erzurum, of course. Some believe that the looted valuables from Ani were taken to Erzurum during Karabekir's occupation, given that he used Erzurum as a base.
Yeah.
King Gagik I statue and the subsequent speculations around its sculptural ensemble are fascinating. But the example I wanted to give, my mom recently, I know you were in Armenia as well.
Yeah.
My mom recently was in Armenia earlier this year. She ended up visiting Eastern Turkey. She did like a tour, one of those tour things. She went to Kars. She went all the way as far to, I believe, Diyarbakir.
Okay.
She was going to climb Nemrut. She didn't, but she got some of these books and she brought some of these books back. Man, this is all Armenian stuff, dude. It's all Armenian ancient stuff, and it's all got like Turkish names given to it.
It says ancient Turkey on it.
I keep forgetting to bring it to you. I'll bring it to you. She brought me the book.
It's in Turkish?
No. Yes. Yeah, it is. But the names are written in, it's written in English letters, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell that they've renamed these things.
Of course.
Dude, this is not, none of it's theirs.
I mean, the fact
and
that
none of it's theirs.
Everything they published, and when we did the
Nemrut.
Yeah, and when we did the Mer Talk show, the live show with Gevur Nazarian in front of a live audience, which was an amazing experience. If you guys haven't watched that, go watch it. It's on our channel. They talk about how, they find all these artifacts.
Yeah, and they give it their names.
And not just that, the fact that the academic world is actually falling for their rewording, renaming, and specifically the fact that they keep saying ancient Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
What part of Turkey is ancient?
Yeah.
Please, somebody.
None of it. Literally none of it.
Ancient
There's
Turkey.
nothing ancient about it.
Anyways.
The furthest it goes, if fundamental history is the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
which is what they basically swept in and settled there in the 15th century. Late, no, 16th century.
16th century.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 1500s.
1500s.
Yeah.
So 16th century.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what, 500,
And
600?
none of that was theirs.
Yeah.
None of that was theirs.
All right. So now architect Vanik Khachaturian theorized that Gagik's statue might have been part of a larger sculpture ensemble, perhaps alongside Queen Katramide II or even a statue of Christ. These sculptures with history and symbolism were meant to convey the grandeur of the times and their rulers. Now, King Gagik I's passing marked kind of the end of an era.
Yeah, it did.
Right?
While there's some debate around the exact year of his passing, could have been what, 1017 or 1020.
Yeah.
The impact of his death is undeniable. King Gagik I was likely buried next to his father Ashot Yerort or Ashot III near the church of Surp Gevorg. It was a fitting resting place given the church's significance and the annals of Armenian history. Post Gagik I era, Armenia entered a very challenging phase, to say the least. After this point.
Yeah, it's actually quite right, Mr. Balian. Unfortunately, with the passing of King Gagik, Armenia's political landscape became turbulent. The rivalry between King Gagik's sons, Hovannes Sambat and Ashot, over the throne weakened the Bagratuni dynasty and the kingdom of Armenia.
Why am I not surprised?
This internal strife and the subsequent decline set the stage of the events that will delve into our upcoming episodes.
A rich tapestry of heartbreak and resurgence. Armenia's history is nothing short of epic, to say the least. We have our high moments, very high moments, and very low moments.
Yeah.
We almost feel like we sound like a really bad European movie that just always has like a bad ending.
Yeah.
To everything.
Yeah.
It's like
it's that constant roller coaster ride of just it never ends.
No.
You go to the height and then you drop down, you go to the height, and there wasn't really, I mean, maybe a small amount of time, but there's never really historically. And as we go further into the future with all these episodes, I mean, man, it's always been some kind of struggle, trying to survive in that area. And we all know why, because obviously the positioning of the landscape and being the crossroads
and the social pressures of massive empires that you were surrounded by that are probably throwing you all sorts of promises and wealth and whatnot. And
well, listen, throughout history, don't forget, we ourselves as Armenians have had or have been large empires.
Yes.
And the problem is is that due to internal strife, we have
never grown more
or been reduced to these smaller kingdoms because of the greed, the jealousy, backstabbing, so forth.
Well, look at it this way. If someone knows that you're not united, right? It's easy to get to your own kind and promise them, like Yusuf promised everybody crowns. It's easy to fracture. It's easy to fracture that. I mean, it still stands today. This is a rule of. This is like a universal rule.
I mean, look at what's happening right now. We're so divided.
What's the cliche? United we stand. Divided we fall. Right.
Yeah.
This is for everyone or everything. This goes from a small 4-person family to a city, to a village, to a state, to a country, whatever you want to classify this as. This is the bottom line. Number one rule of controlling anything is divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So if you have division within your own ranks, how easy is it for somebody? You don't even have to be a major enemy.
Yeah.
To penetrate you and say, hey, I could give you this, I could give you this, I could promise you this, and yada, yada, yada.
I couldn't agree more, my friend. And
mean,
that's what I'm
it's
saying. It's unfortunate that that same situation is happening today
of course it is.
with the division within our people, and not just the diaspora over there, especially. You know, the diaspora, we do as much as we can, but it's just this is going to be the downfall of us as a people if this doesn't change. These you know, you have the opposition. I mean, you know, it's always healthy to have opposition, right? You look at here, you have the two sides. Obviously, it's a
Of course it
two
is.
party kind of a system here. You know, yeah, you have these other parties, but
Yeah,
they don't
whatever.
really, yeah. But over there, it's like, man, it's unbelievable, the tension. I mean, it's pure hatred, and it's like, how can people from the same nation, same, let's call it bloodline, hate each other so much? What is
Some
this bug
people
doing here?
Some people some
But
people would blame it on, and I do agree with this to an extent. Some people would blame it on post-Soviet collapse. Everybody was desperate. Everyone's trying to make money. Everyone's trying to survive. Blah 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 blah. And you know, Karpelisk said like they started to kind of like everybody was like, you know, to each their own, survival of the fittest, yada yada yada. Right? I got it. And then
everybody trying to take a piece of the pie.
and then you got this like little percentage. I can't even put a number on it. You got this little percentage who just managed to grab everything, more or less everything, and everybody else was down here, right? And now everybody that was down here, it's like you flash them a little bit of this, a little bit of money, and they're just like, dude, your wish is my command, more or less, right? To the highest bidder. And it's true. I don't care. I'll say it. Like it's 100% true.
It's real. Listen,
of
we
course
have
it's
to,
reality.
We as people, and not just being
But
Armenian,
even
you have to face reality. You have to accept the fact that we as a nation, we as people, we're not perfect. We have a lot of problems and a lot of faults. And the point of talking about this stuff is to recognize the mistakes we're making, to correct those in order to be able to have a better future as a nation, as a people, for our kids. You know, we're gonna die off one day, and what are you gonna leave your kids and your grandchildren? What is there gonna be in Armenia even at that time?
But here's the interesting thing about this, and now we can say it's recent history. We can't say we don't understand it. We haven't talked about it. Ever since post-Soviet collapse, the individuals, I don't need to name the names, who really made all the money, who took the big, giant piece of the pie for the last 30, 35 years, it was like it was never enough for them. They needed to take more and more and more and more and more. It was never enough for them. It's like you could never snip enough of the top of the tree.
Yeah.
You could never get to the top of the tree to snip it enough because they just needed to outgrow it more and more and more.
But you know what that's from? You know what that's from? It's as
if like, sorry, really quick. It's as if they never saw it and they can't see the end of it.
Well, see, here's the thing. If you take a human being who becomes successful in life financially by working hard, by sweat and tears, and going through all the stages of success and reaching that top of become, let's say, a multimillionaire or billionaire, right? That person appreciates and understands the value of money, of wealth. Someone like that who all of a sudden was there at the right time, right place, many of them, who all of a sudden had this spout open for them where a limited amount of money was coming in.
Black gold came out.
Yeah. And they tried to take as much as now when that's happening. So what happens is someone who doesn't understand the value of it, what they do is if they're going to go buy these glasses, and these glasses for someone normal, let's say these glasses cost $1,000, right? For you and I, $1,000 for glasses? Have you lost your mind?
You're going to do everything not to lose them. You're going to take care of them.
Okay. But here's the thing. First of all, you can't afford to pay $1,000 for, let's say, a thing. Someone like them, they don't value it because it's just a number. Because they have millions coming in, right? That's the thing. So they're never going to stop because it's an addiction at the same time. Their lifestyles changed. I mean, how many women do we know that have like massive properties all over the world? I mean, offshore bank accounts.
to hide
until
money,
this day,
to,
until
to
this
whatever.
day, they live lavishly, and most of them are here now in the United States.
Well, they have a lot of abroad investments. I mean,
Well,
again, not to name names, but I'm sure
with
some of you guys know.
stolen blood money.
Yes.
And to the
And look, who's to say we, unless we had a time machine and we could go back and see it physically ourselves, who's to say that maybe some of these noble families didn't live the same ways? Who's to say? Maybe in 1,000 years ago ways.
yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
You know what I'm saying? Who's to say that like they didn't live? So I guess what I'm saying is I guess I have my platform to be kind of critical here is maybe some of us haven't changed in a thousand years.
Changed,
I mean, I hate to sound that way, man, but like every time we go into this, we talk about this, it's like the same thing.
But here's the thing. If you go back, you look at, there was the greed, there was the backstabbing.
Of course there was.
But
that's not
like
just
said,
limited to Armenians. It's been so many different cultures.
You know, just in this, what we just talked about, you saw that these powerful families, the money that they had, the wealth, they put it back into their kingdoms to protect the people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Military and spiritual.
Yeah. Versus what happened in the last 30 years, which was,
it
was all fake. Everything they pretended.
Okay. So you're way more versed. Let's be real. You're way more versed with like the modern shortcomings of our heritage over the last like 30, 35 years. Can you tell me a time where military and spiritual were that combined based off of what we talked about tonight?
No, I think they tried to make it seem like it was, but it wasn't. And because they were in on it together.
Of course.
They were in on it together. Yeah. Wow.
Anyway.
Talk about digressing, right?
Yeah. Sorry, got a little passionate
but,
there.
You know, again, a lot of the stuff we talk about, it reminds us of everything that is happening today, and it's very hard not to talk about it, and we want to talk about it. We want to tell these stories to realize, you know, what has happened in the past and what is happening now, because what is happening now is going to be history soon.
Yeah,
Recent
yesterday is history.
So, but hopefully you guys learned something from this episode. Yeah. We'll be back with a new episode, hopefully next week again. Like
and
I said,
some new artwork.
Yeah, some new artwork. We have a lot more to cover, and we are trying our best to be with you guys on a weekly basis. But like I said, sometimes life throws things in front of you where you have to take care of those things first before
that and the holidays are coming up.
Our fun little podcast. Again, if you guys don't follow us on Instagram, please do so. It's at Herosner. If you guys want to reach out to us, you can either DM us on Instagram or you can email us at pod@medherosner.com with any questions. And again, please support us. Go to patreon.com/medherosner. The link is actually in the body of the video, where you guys can click on it and become a Patreon. It's $5. So buy us a coffee. And we'll continue doing what we do. Even if you don't buy us a coffee, we'll still continue
the
doing
show
what
must
we do.
go on.
Yeah. But besides that, anything else I'm forgetting? No?
Next episode we'll show off some fun artwork.
Yeah. And we'll talk about more of the Bagratunis. We're almost at the end of the Bagratuni dynasty.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the two brothers who fought over the control of the kingdom, which pretty much was the end of...
Put the cap on it?
Put the cap on it, sealed it.
It had to come down to two brothers.
Yeah. But anyways, everyone, thank you again for joining us for this episode of Herosner. We are thankful for everybody who has subscribed. We are in awe. Over 10,000. I think we're getting close to 11,000. But again, thank you. So, as we always say at the end of every episode, respect one another.
Love one another.
Until the next episode, take care of yourselves.